Welcome to the September 29th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair acknowledges the assistance and ever-continuing support of our entire staff, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, and Kristen. We're short 2 members tonight. Our appointed alternate, though it was a tough decision to make, is Pat Harris. I'd like to remind the commissioners that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to talk over each other. Hint, hint, all my co-chairmans. And also that the votes are done by roll call. So when I call your name, state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion in the second or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. As per Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 regarding COVID-19, we allow for full public participation. If you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. First up, vote minutes, September 15, 2021. Anyone?
I move we accept the minutes as written, subject to any modifications identified tonight.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay. Are there any modifications being offered? Did we lose Steve? Oh, there he is.
Back.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted. Next up, vote minutes for September 22, 2021.
Harris, I move that we accept the minutes as written, subject to any modifications identified tonight.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, are there any modifications offered? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to accept as submitted. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted. Next up, requests for determination of applicability. First up, Lawrence Knoller, 111 Pinecrest Beach Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish an existing deck and construct a new deck in the same footprint. Mr. Newton?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved. Gladfelter.
Pat and
Harris,
second.
second.
You guys are bogged down already. We're only 3 items in. All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up are requests for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. And I'm going to remind you, for public commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to this particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to this hearing. First up, Kara Crowley, 12 Cotuit Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise the foundation of existing single-family dwelling to meet building code and FEMA requirements, to remove an existing rinse station, deck, and stairs, to construct a new deck and stairs, to reconfigure the driveway, to construct a landscape wall and walkway, to install a new H20 septic tank, to install native plantings, and to install dry wells. And it looks like Mr. Bunker, you are up, sir.
I am up. Thank you. Good evening. Glad to be back here again. Seems like just a week ago I was here. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. We prepared this plan, which I will now go to sharing my screen and show you the plan, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So actually I have a, first I have a plan here that I didn't do. It's just the GIS map, the town GIS map. To show where this is outlined in yellow. It's 12 Cotuit Road. You might notice, I don't have all of it, but this in the lower part of the photo is the Seacrest Conference and Resort Center. Potter's Hole is a tidal pond which goes out through the Wild Harbor River, and just to the left off of this screen is Silver Beach area. And so we have this plan. I have a large blow up of the house, and that's for zoning board of appeals purposes. It is going there, has been filed. And so to go over, you saw in the picture, there's Potter's Hole. It's one of the resource areas, which is land under a water body, salt marsh bordering Potter's Hole. And here, the entire area is in flood zone elevation, AE elevation 15. And so all land that slopes greater than 10:1 is considered a coastal bank. In this case, the bank right through here, which touches down at the edge of the salt marsh, that has a 50-foot zone A, which is along this red line here. There's another bit of coastal bank up along the side of the property on this side also. It's lawn alongside the driveway. Does go steeper than 10% there. And that has not touching it's within 100 feet, but not touching a resource area. It has a 25-foot zone A. So this is the existing, and I filed a separate existing conditions plan, but just showing the proposed site plan here. So there's really not a lot happening. It seems to be not a lot happening, although the description seemed like more than it might be. But the proposal is to raise with an AIS the house and build a new foundation under it. So the house will be raised up 3.5 feet. The existing floor elevation does not conform to flood zone regulations, and there is no foundation under the house at all. So this is to build a foundation under the house. The first part of that will be to remove the deck, detach the deck, and as told by the architect that the hope is just to detach it and move it. So I have I'm not sure how well that'll be possible with railings and all, but I do have an area down by the garage here labeled as a temporary deck storage area. Of course, if they're not able to, or if they have to cut it up into smaller pieces or something, then it might be easier to just take it off site. But they have to remove the deck. And of course, all the excavation will have to happen from the bottom. And I said in my narrative, I can't explain all that goes on when they're doing this, but it's a combination of lifting up on hydraulic jacks and doing excavation and putting it up on crib work, so they can finally get in and put the foundation around under it. It is intended to be the exact same footprint as what's there now, except that in raising it, of course, they will and putting it back down, it'll be a few feet higher, and of course they have to add more steps. So I've colored in these 2 sets of steps from the deck, and those are the additional treads and risers so that it'll meet the ground when it's done. And with overdig on both sides, I figure that the trucks with the fill will go up and down the driveway, and we'll probably have to scooch over a bit, and there might be some temporary disturbance to this coastal bank on along the property line, which will be restored to its pre-construction condition. Of course, the driveway here will probably get pretty beat up during all this work and be rebuilt. And you'll see this, we're rebuilding this, the sort of straight part of it as the driveway with a grass strip down the middle. So there's a typo on the plan. It says here 9-foot width, but that was a previous label. It's 8 feet as drawn and 8 feet as described in the narrative, with a 4-foot wide strip of grass down the middle. And this is to decrease the runoff and help give some improvement to the area by decreasing the runoff toward the wetland, and of course to decrease the coverage. Aside from these, what was the area? 60 square feet of these 2 steps. There is about 162 square feet increase in zone B, which has to do with there's a retaining wall going around, so I included the retaining wall in the proposed coverage. Some retaining wall, and because of this retaining wall, the driveway had to be widened a bit on the inside of the curve and a bit better curve on the outside. So about 224 square feet of increase there. And so we have the reduction in coverage in the driveway, with lawn strip down the middle, and the dry wells will go in. Can only fit them on the south side because dry wells have to be 25 feet from the septic system up top, and there will be a new H20 septic tank installed. That existing tank has to come out to do the excavation and to put this wall. This is like an upper terrace up near the floor elevation, just 2 feet high on this side. And because of the overdig and the condition, the vegetative condition on this right-hand side of the house, that will all be taken out. There is a couple of native plants down there, but they're all covered otherwise with bittersweet and whatever else, honeysuckle, the thing. So that will all get cleared out, and the equal area will be replanted along the property line and going closer to the Salt Marsh resource area, which will be, I think, a slight improvement for the habitat value. So that is what we're proposing to do, and I will stop my sharing and take questions.
Thank you, sir. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Tom, is the fence on the plan, is that those little circles next to the garage on your plan? Is that the fence? Because you don't have it labeled.
Which,
So the fence, there's the garage and then there's a fence right there that's kind of blocking the back part of that Seacrest Resort.
yeah,
And it only goes like halfway across the back of the lot. Is that on your plan? Is that those circles with the line?
yes,
Okay. You
yes,
just did,
that-
all right.
that line type is in the legend as a fence, yes.
That was the. Oh, look at that fence. Okay, cool. The only concern I have is, I think the comment I have is that I'm not too thrilled with the grass strip in the driveway. I mean, the whole purpose is when you're increasing, I know you're trying to decrease your impervious surface, but we really don't, I mean, we really have a very small buffer to that salt marsh. So I think wildlife habitat wise and buffer wise, it would be better for some mitigation plantings in that area as opposed to a grass strip in the driveway. And I think that is the only thing I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Oh, one more thing, Tom, when they move the deck, obviously they're gonna have to put longer support posts under it, right?
Yes, they will.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's it.
Sure. All right. Betsy.
No questions, thanks.
All right. Kevin.
No questions.
Pat.
No questions, thanks.
Oh, Peter.
No questions.
Steve.
Thanks. I'm a fan of the RAISE plans, so no questions.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Not pertaining to this hearing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Are we really going to close it? I think Tom wants to consider Jen's statement.
Well, yeah, I
Tom?
consider that statement, and I mean, I think it could be left up to voting a condition. I could suggest that the line I have started, where we're spreading out, what I call it, restoration planting, along that lot line. Of course, I don't want to do a large. I agree, it's a very narrow buffer to the salt marsh, but it's also a very small lot with a small access. So I don't know if that could be left up to a vote. Or I could suggest perhaps a combination. I mean, of some decreasing the size of the driveway, which we've done, and also putting in some buffer, but the entire 2-to-1 and 3-to-1 would be quite a bit of mitigation on this, small area that's available on this site. So
I'd be more comfortable I don't mind if you split it, but I'd be more comfortable if you came in with a plan so that the staff doesn't have to have sort of an amorphous order. So I'm hoping you ask for a continuance.
Yes, yes, I will. I would just like to request I think the ZBA is on next Thursday, and so I don't know if they can get sort of a referral that it seemed that the hearing is going well, so that the ZBA hearing would not have to be continued next Thursday, and I can request a continuance for 2 weeks to change what I have drawn somewhat.
Tom, we don't meet on the 13th. We have a really light hearing next week. So if you could get us a plan by early next week, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to put you on next week unless the board feels differently. I know you like your plans a week in advance, but unless it's a really minor change or small change, and if the board feels more comfortable having the plan, which I do appreciate, thank you. We don't like saying this. I don't see any reason why the staff wouldn't be able to quickly review it next week. And you could be on next week. I mean, you're already on next week for an amended order anyway, Tom. Aren't you 29 Nauset?
Yeah, I am.
So is that something you think you might be able to get done, or?
Yeah, I'll talk to the client. She might be listening. She asked about tuning in, but I'll talk to her and see if we can find a middle ground for doing something there.
Okay.
So yeah, we
So
can have
what's-
something for a 1 week continuance.
Is that the
If that can
6th?
work.
Yes.
The request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue to October 6th.
Harris, second.
All right, everybody clear on that? All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 10:06. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter? Peter, you muted.
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until October 6th. Thank you, Mr. Bunker.
Thank you. See you in a week.
Thank you, Tom. You done for the night?
I'm done, I believe.
Okay. Good night,
All right.
Tom.
Good night.
All right. I've been asked to take the next two hearings out of order or flip-flop them because one's going to be continued, so we don't want everybody sitting around waiting. So I need a motion and a second to table John Grassi Senior for 2 minutes.
I'll make the motion. Gladfelter?
Second.
Harris, second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to table Mr. Grassi. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
and Steve.
Pat and I.
Thank you. It's unanimous. We've tabled this for a minute. So that would bring us to continued hearings under notice of intent, which this one would be Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, 86 Water Street, Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to replace the existing Iceland Marine Facility at 86 Water Street in Woods Hole. The proposed work will involve A, the in-kind replacement of the existing pile-supported dock, B, reconstruction and reconfiguration of the deteriorated bulkhead and small boat slips, C, installation of an autonomous vessel port, D, dredging along the facility's west berth, and E, site redevelopment, including demolition of the Iceland building and construction of a new waterfront building. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until October 27th.
All right, anybody?
At the request of the applicant, I'd make a motion to continue to October 27th.
Thank
Harris,
you.
second.
All right, so the motion on the, and the second on the table is to continue this till 10:27. Betsy?
I'm recusing myself from this. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jamie.
I'm sorry. Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We've continued this hearing until 10:27. All right, now, if I could, I need a motion to untable Mr. Grassi.
So moved, Gladfelter?
Harris, second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to untable the first hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have untabled the next hearing. Therefore, without further ado, next up under continued hearings under a notice of intent, John Grassi Senior and Diane Grassi, 23 Southview Way, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a pier, deck, and privacy fence, and to install mitigation and restoration plantings. For the record, I am recusing myself from this hearing, but I will stay on as moderator to keep all you guys in line.
So may I ask a question? Jen,
Yes,
have we, or Jamie, have we opened this hearing?
we have not.
No,
Okay,
no, wait, first hearing, Jamie, Courtney, Kevin, Peter, and
Yes.
Steve.
that's what I have also.
Did we open this one?
I don't
Matt,
believe
no,
we did.
you might have written it
didn't.
down, but we didn't open it.
We didn't open it, right?
No.
Matt?
No, this
All
is the
right.
first, I haven't presented it yet.
Yeah, I think we jumped ahead. Jen and I jumped ahead, thinking it was gonna
Yeah.
be open.
Yeah.
Did you jump
Trying to
ahead
be
to
efficient.
approval?
I got you, Pat. Hold on.
No, I didn't quite get that far.
All right,
Sorry.
hold on. Pat has a disclosure to make. Pat, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a professional relationship with Attorney Wall regarding a matter outside of the jurisdiction of the commission. I filed a disclosure with our appointing authority and the town clerk outlining the relationship and stating that I can act without prejudice on matters presented to the commission by Attorney Wall. I'm making this disclosure to dispel any appearance of a potential conflict of interest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Costa, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Matt Costa, Cape and Islands Engineering. I'm here tonight with Brian Wall. Together, we're representing the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Grassi, who are also watching on Zoom. If I may, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're here tonight before you under a notice of intent application for a property located at 23 Southview Way, fronts on Flax Pond. We're proposing to install a seasonal dock to expand a deck, a first floor deck area, and to install a new fence along the eastern property line, and to restore an area within a previously to restore an area that was cut that was to remain naturally vegetated buffer. Your resource areas for this project include land under a body of water, which is Flax Pond, and a BBW that borders Flax Pond. Additionally, this is located within natural habitat endangered species area, which is denoted by this pink line here. And if everybody can see my screen, the area towards the center of the pond is habitat area. The area towards upland is outside habitat area. We did file with Natural Heritage on this, and we did receive a note tape. Because this pond is located within NHESP area, it does have a 100-foot zone A around it, and we delineated that 100-foot zone A from the inland bank, which is essentially the highest high water mark of the pond. Starting with the dock is proposed to be a pre-manufactured seasonal dock consisting of aluminum framing and composite grading for decking. Comes with various deck options, and one of those is the through-flow decking option. We've situated it down here at the water's edge in a already cleared area that has been access to the pond since the house was built. The dimensions of the structure are a 32 by 4 foot fixed pier going out to a 6 by 16 T end, and that will be removed seasonally. Moving inland, we have the area noted here in the hashing, the striped hashing, and that's area to be restored for some previous cutting. This area was to remain naturally vegetated buffer. We have a gray area here that is the mitigation plantings. Those are the plantings as required under your buffer regulations for the deck. Those have been calculated at a 3-to-1 ratio. And we have the fence over in this area located along the property line. It's intended to be a privacy fence. It's been located 10 feet away from the BVW. It will be constructed 1 foot above ground for passage of wildlife. This property was developed legally under a previous order of conditions for the existing single-family structure that you see here, along with the grading and landscape. With respect to the dock and the deck, this is a very straightforward project. We did review this with staff ahead of time. They did identify some issues that we discussed with them at length, and I'm going to hand it over to Brian Wall in a minute to talk about the buffer area. But one of the main issues is that the old order of conditions has in it a special condition that references buffer area that's to remain naturally vegetated. And the discrepancy, there's some ambiguity there that I'll let Brian describe. But everything else we believe with respect to the dock and the deck does meet the performance standards. And we are requesting an order of conditions. So at this point, I'll hand it off to Brian and he can explain the buffer portion of things, and then together we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt.
Brian, do you want me to leave the plan up?
I think that would be helpful, Matt. Good evening. Through the chair, for the record, my name is Brian Wall, and I'm an attorney, and I represent the applicants in this case. And as Matt indicated, the reason why I'm involved in what seems to be a straightforward project, excuse me, is that when the project was filed, it came to all of our attention that there's been some unpermitted cutting in the buffer, and that's essentially shown on the plan in that shaded area that says wood chips. So in order to address this issue, Matt and I met on site with Jen and Allison. I think Matt actually had a meeting before my involvement, and staff took the position, which is outlined in their report, that condition number 2 in the old 1993 order of conditions required an undisturbed buffer landward of the limit of work shown on the old 1993 plan. And staff requested that the applicant plant all of that area of wood chips up to the area of the old limit of work, which is essentially shown. Matt, you might be able to help me. Is it that the green line that's just south of the retaining wall? It's in that approximate area.
The old limit of work essentially follows this landscape bed area, and then it's more or less follows this retaining wall. So that's where the old limit of work is. And on the old plan of record, it did list a 35-foot buffer, and it did call it out to remain naturally vegetated.
Right, exactly. So when the site meeting ended, Matt and I talked to the client. The client obviously does not want to replant, or said another way, wants to replant to the minimum extent possible since this is their yard. And Matt and I decided to very carefully look at the old order of conditions and the plan. And the reason why I'm here tonight is to suggest to the commission that there's an alternative interpretation of condition number 2. And so let me just paraphrase or read it. The first sentence of condition number 2 says, the area beyond the limit of work towards Flax Pond is to remain in its natural state. And then the second sentence says, this protective buffer strip is to be an ongoing condition to run with the deed of the property. And it cites FWR 10.12, which is obviously a different section than today. So I believe that staff took the position that says the area beyond the limit of work is to remain in its natural state, and took the interpretation that that was the entire area of the property south of the limit of work towards the pond. But we focused on the phrase, this protective buffer strip. And I keep emphasizing this because it's saying this particular buffer strip. And I have 2 points to make that I'd like to say. So the first is that in 1993, when this order of conditions was adopted, it was only about 3 years after the commission adopted its very first set of regulations. So your bylaw was adopted in 79, and you had no regulations at all until 1989. And I did submit a copy of the 89 regulations. And what it talks about is, for the very first time, the commission had authority to impose a condition to create a vegetated buffer strip. And the section 10.122 referred to in the order of conditions talks about a continuous buffer strip untouched in its natural state. And I could go on, but the key phrase that we want to focus on is, it says, the width of this strip and the amount of work permitted therein may vary somewhat with each project. But then it says in a parenthetical, a minimum of 25 feet is common. So that segues to the next point, is that the plan that went along with this order of conditions has a line on it 35 feet from the edge of the water, and it has the notation protective buffer strip, which takes the same language from the regulation. And also that's the same language in condition number 2, this protective buffer strip. So our contention is that if you read condition number 2, what the protective buffer strip is the 35-foot area. And there's a further legal argument to be made, and I'll just make it very simply. Whenever there's an ambiguity in a document, the law requires that the ambiguity be drawn against the drafter and in favor of the person against which the condition applies. And there's all kinds of case law about contracts and about deeds that whenever there's an ambiguity, it's always interpreted in favor of the person who did not draft the language. And so we respect Jen's position. I understand it. But I think that if you look at this condition number 2, there's a fair way to read this that would say the buffer was 35 feet. And so our proposal is to restore the buffer zone with natural vegetation. And I'll defer to Matt. He talked to Jen about the plant species. And also Jen said that the pathway to the dock was permitted because that's allowed under your FWR 1018. So that's essentially our contention. If you look at the language, we think this is a fair and reasonable result for all parties concerned.
One more thing I would just like to add quickly is that when the certificate of compliance was done, the original visit was done by former administrator, and there was actually a handwritten note on the certificate of compliance, a sticky note, and it talked about the retaining wall. And there was questions, retaining wall 8 feet high. This retaining wall here is approximately 8 feet high in some areas. So this was existing when they went out to do the certificate of compliance. And in order to build that wall, there had to have been a considerable amount of area around the wall that was all entirely disturbed. It's a very significant wall. So if they were getting compliance at that time, that area couldn't have been naturally vegetated. We just think that further supports the argument that the intent for the natural buffer was the 35-foot buffer, not the entire area behind the limit of work. And that's all I had to add.
Thank you, Matt. You could stop sharing. All right. Matt, is there anybody else in your party that needs to speak, wants to speak?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Jen?
Clients and does your client want to speak? He's in the Zoom.
I think he can raise his hand if he wanted to.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just double checking.
No,
Okay, sounds good. Am I up, Mr. Chairman?
You're up.
Okay, start with the easy things. Matt, the fence. You and I spoke this afternoon. There's no trees that are going to be removed to install that fence, right?
yes, we're not planning on removing any trees within jurisdiction for the fence.
Okay, you're not planning on removing any trees. What if did you really stake that line out and make sure that there was no trees to be removed? Because it's really thick in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the intent. If we need to adapt, we have to come back, we would, but we're
Okay.
not to.
Okay, just making sure that's clear. As far as the dock goes, Matt, it's an all aluminum dock. It's going in the posts in the ground that are going to stay in there, so it's set in the same position every year.
Yep, so I believe we submitted some information on that, but I do have a cut sheet for the type of dock, and it's aluminum framing with the composite, the plastic decking.
The composite decking, okay. All right. And that's a 50% light penetration?
Yeah, they do have through flow as an option. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Not concerned about, you've got your proposed mitigation plantings up there. So the extension of the deck isn't there. Matt, did you put the kayak rack on the plan? Great. It didn't look like, Matt, that you had the staking in the field reflected your 35-foot buffer, so you might want to check that. Okay.
Yes.
Unless it didn't feel that the staking was really reflective of the plan.
Yes, she's correct.
And then to the buffer zone, Brian pretty much sums it up. There is an old order. It does say, they proposed a plan with a proposed 35-foot buffer strip. The commission reviewed that plan, and any project is subject to your order of conditions. So like I said, like Brian stated, the area beyond the limit of work, which is around the base of that wall and towards that buffer planting, is to remain in its natural state. This protective buffer strip is ongoing with the deed. So staff feels that, that was pretty clear. And to further clarify it, and there's no ambiguity in the fourth condition of that order, which it says the lawn limit on this property is to be 1,500 square feet, all of which is to be contained on the street side of the house. So I don't really think that's very confusing. That's pretty clear that the commission at the time wanted the area in wanted the whole back of that house in a somewhat natural state. So it is the staff's position that the current state of the property violates the old order of conditions. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that is all I have, unless Kevin has anything to add.
I do not have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Oh, and Matt, you're going to add that note on land under water bodies for me on that buffer strip, right? The buffer, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, you good?
I am good.
All right, Betsy, you're up.
Okay, I'm not going to ask any questions, but I'll say that I don't need any more information. Thanks.
All right, Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Pat.
Has the record for the 1993 matter been submitted into this record?
I believe you just did that, Pat. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Peter.
Matt, could you show us
via screen sharing exactly what the proposed lawn will be? Jen said it's limited to 1,500 square feet, all on the other side of the house. What's the proposed lawn on the present drawing?
And we're not proposing any changes to the lawn on the present drawing. That wasn't actually anything we discussed prior to this. So there's nothing for me to share and show you. There's no proposed changes to that.
Is there any lawn? Is there any lawn between the house and the pond? I think
Yes.
that's what
Here,
Peter would like to see.
share.
And I'd like to
Alright.
see it too, Peter.
Sure, let me share. Okay. So this area right here is lawn area right now. And then this area and here, this way is lawn area. And then there's lawn area around the front. These are this is the limit of the landscape beds. These are landscape beds. This is landscape bed area in here.
So
Thanks,
I
Matt.
will continue the question to Matt. The present condition right today is apparently in conflict with the original order of conditions. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's actually something we just haven't discussed at all as an issue up to this point. So there was no proposed changes to it. I know the applicant isn't a huge fan of maintaining lawn area, so we could talk to them. He would actually like to comment in the Zoom. Jen, perhaps you could.
I can do that. I'll promote him up. And I mean, the only reason the staff that brought it up is I've got the 93 order right in front of me. Is just that it was very clear, and it was just to speak to Attorney Wall's statement of ambiguity. It is something that we never raised with the applicant because we felt it was like not a huge issue. But it just goes to show that the board at the time, wanted a full buffer strip. I think I just promoted John up. He just left the attendees, and where is he?
While we're waiting for him, if I could just add one simple comment to that too, is that when I mentioned in my presentation about the unpermitted cutting, some of that was done by our client, Mr. Grassi, but they're recent purchasers of this property, relatively recent, and that lawn was there. They did not put that lawn there. It's been there for a long time.
I just promoted John Grassi up to a panelist. Mr. Grassi, you'll need to unmute, and if you have a camera,
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I don't know about the camera thing. I don't know how to work the computer good.
That's okay. We can hear you.
Like Mr. Wall said, I bought the house with the lawn the way it is. I did not add anything to it. It's been like that for 28 years.
All right. Anything else, sir?
Isn't there something called, I forget the exact words, but anything after so many years, it doesn't really matter? I don't know the correct terminology.
I think you mean the statute of limitations, John. Yeah, or grandfathering.
That's a Brian question.
Yeah, so while this has been going on, I've been thinking about it too, is I see Jen's point about the fact that they did not want lawn to be in the back. But, things have come a long way since 1993. Back then, there was no such thing as the Falmouth Friendly Lawn Program. I think maybe that condition was put in in kind of an overly broad fashion that today it might be better tailored. I don't think the commission would have a problem with lawn more than 100 feet away from jurisdiction. So maybe we could give a little thought to that too.
It's clearly been there since at least 2005. I can't pull up the 91 aerial, but it's clearly been lawn since 2005 aerial online, guys. So again, the only reason the staff made the statement was to speak, to try to clarify that ambiguity about how the former board wanted a protective buffer.
It's just that, you know, we have the plans and we put buffer zones on them, and they did that back then. They labeled it a 35-foot buffer with to remain in its natural state. And if you do read that first condition, they talk about the area beyond the limit of work. And then they jump into the buffer area. So it was just our contention that, or our argument is that when they talk about the area beyond the limit of work, they're talking about the buffer area, which albeit is relatively new to them. I think they're only about 3 years into having these regulations, their first set of regulations. So we put a lot of weight into the fact that they did show on the plan 35-foot buffer area to remain natural. So that's just the basis for it. Jen's been great to work with, and she's spent a lot of time with us. We met several times on site. So we're not trying to be argumentative here. It's just that I think there's something to that. And if you go back and you read those with that thought, maybe you might see it that way as well.
Thank you. Peter, you're still up. You have anything else?
Jen, the grass area that we are talking about that's between the house and the pond, is that within the jurisdiction of conservation?
Yes, Peter, it's in the, it looks like it's a little bit in the A and in the B buffer zones of land under water bodies.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
No questions, Chairman.
All right. Matt and or Brian, anything else you want to add at this point?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just to pick up on Matt's point, I think if you go back in time, today when we talk about buffer strips, we're used to 100-foot buffers. We're used to the zone A and B that Jen just referenced. But back in this time frame, buffer strips were new. And I think that when you look at the word "this buffer strip" and then you look at the plan that says protective buffer strip 35 feet, there's a very clear argument that that's what was intended. And that was actually more than the minimum required by the regulations at the time. And again, I see Jen's point about the plan and the order, and I think her position is the order trumps the plan. The other side of that coin is the plan is more accurate and trumps the order. And I saw Betsy just on the last hearing with Tom Bunker say, you know, I don't want an amorphous situation. Why don't you ask for a continuance and correct that plan? So this is the plan that was approved. It has a 35-foot protective buffer strip, and that's our case. You understand what we're saying.
All right. Any other commission comments?
Just
Yeah.
one thing, Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful to the board to see the 90-day plan? It would. Okay,
I'd like to see. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll show you I have it right up on my screen. I've pulled it up. I'm trying to get it to. And how did I just do with it? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to share my screen real quick so the board can see. Do you see that, guys?
Not yet.
See it?
Yep.
Can you
Okay,
do-
so
can you
this is
zoom-
what Brian and Matt are talking about, where it says 35-foot wide vegetated buffer to remain in its natural state. And this is that limit of work that the commission said or at least, made the statement. Brian, you had it right perfectly.
Yeah, it's right in the order. It says, the
Yeah.
area beyond the limit of work towards Flax Pond is to remain in its natural state. And then the next sentence says, this protective buffer strip is to be an ongoing condition to run with the deed of the property. And then it cites FWR 10-12-2, which is the protective buffer strip provisions that I mentioned.
You want me to stop sharing, guys?
Thank you.
Yes, please.
All right, Betsy,
So I have a question for either Jen or Pat, or Brian probably knows the answer to this too. Weren't 100-foot buffers considered as resource areas in 1979
I believe
when the
that
wetlands?
I believe, Betsy, that was the jurisdictional area, that there was an area called the buffer zone. And I have the definition right here from 1989. The zone is the area of land extending 100 feet radially landward from the boundary of any resource area. So clearly the commission had 100 feet of jurisdiction. I'm just making the point that the ability to condition a project by requiring a vegetated buffer strip was new, relatively new at the time.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying that these buffers are also regulated resources by our bylaw.
I agree. I don't dispute that.
Pat,
I would really like an opportunity to see everything in the record from 93 before I conclude whether there is an ambiguity or not. I'd like to see the order of conditions, if there's any minutes, and, look at the plan, hard copy, have an opportunity to consider the arguments of the applicant and the advice from the administrative staff.
Would it be helpful if we requested a continuance to give some more time for that and add
I
that
can't speak,
information?
right, I can't speak for everybody else, but it'd certainly be helpful to me.
Well, I'll make a comment that there's a quorum of 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would recommend, Mr. Chair, I thought the chairman recused himself.
I did. There's still 5 though.
Oh,
There
there
are
are?
5 of us, Brian,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Mr. Pat.
everybody but Jamie.
Okay. Well, my point still stands. We need a majority of 4. So if Pat feels that she would like to have a continuance, I would certainly recommend that to Mr. Grassi.
We can provide the order of conditions, Pat. We can email you all a plan. Obviously, Brian and Matt will give you obviously what we send the commission. What else are you looking for, Pat? Minutes?
If there are minutes, they might have a discussion regarding the very subject we're disputing.
Minutes back in 93, that might take us some time. We'd have to go to archives and see if we can actually even locate them.
Yeah.
But God, I can put a good. Kevin loves to go to archives. He hasn't been there for a while.
I'm sure.
Kevin over to archives.
I'd
right.
like to request a continuance then for 2 weeks or to the next available date.
2 weeks is the 13th, so the next available would be the 20th. Matt, is that okay?
Sure.
All right, before we get carried away, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Peter Hargraves, I would like to speak on the Grassi 23 Southview Way hearing. I hope you can offer 10 minutes for my picture presentation. I am going to promote Peter Hargraves. Hang on. I am promoting Peter Hargraves up to a panelist right now. Mr. Hargraves, you're a panelist. You can address the commission.
Okay.
So thanks for the opportunity to speak, because this information might actually inform any further work, so you don't have to come back yet again. I'm not sure what your reaction will be, but I haven't heard it spoken on any of the other extensive discussion here. And so I'll share my screen. There are a lot of pictures, and stop me if you want to, or we can have questions at the end. And I'm going to leave it in this mode because I can use this arrow. Can you see this cursor moving around?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there are 2 points. One is concerning the west property line, which is the other side of where the fence is. And the other is concerning the privacy fence, which impacts our property here. And I realize that there's a lot of freedom to put up fences if you're not in a historic district. Yet there's some input that's relevant to this body and your deliberation. So thanks for hearing me out. And just for orientation, this is the west side. This is our association beach. And this is Flax Creek with a conservation restriction here and here. And here's my property. And I'll give you further orientation when we go to the second section here. So basically on the west property line, there's construction debris, lumber, yard waste, and miscellaneous detritus. And I didn't see any of this mentioned in the mitigation plan. And it is on the conservation area, conservation restricted area. And I believe that it was there before Mr. Grazzi moved into his house. But nevertheless, it's encroaching on the subject of interest here, which is that property. And I don't know what you can do about it, if anything. And so, so just walking across this path, that's what this is, went into the woods and to that property line, you can see yard waste and some random pieces of lumber. There's a plastic piece of junk there. And further on, here's some concrete scrim, more yard waste, stumps, Christmas trees, extra rocks from rock wall construction. There are lath strips and such in here. So that's all. Some of it's on the property, some of it's pushed off into the area that belongs to Botello's, related to the common property of the beach. So that's all I have to add for your information on the west side of the line, and I hadn't heard it covered in the plan here tonight. The other part is related to the fence, which runs along here. Here's the front. In my photos, which are labeled, this is the front, the back, and the side. And in this area here where my cursor is running, when Mr. Grazzi first moved in, we had a cordial conversation and agreed to plant some trees. My property is a little bit higher. We planted trees on my property so it would give him privacy on the side yard. And I have some pictures that show a vantage point from various places, just so to orient you. This is the deck, and I have shots from here and along this rail out the kitchen window, and then on both sides through from my yard into his. And so basically, the side yards there on the east boundary of 23 Southview is inert. We don't, either of us, use the side yards for any purpose, but that is where the least privacy exists. There's, in the rest of the property up front and in the back in the conservation restriction, there's substantial landscape and native vegetative cover and more privacy than you can't even see, and that's why I have pictures. Any fence that's installed there is going to require significant disruption, and I agree with Mr. Costa that you can probably work around the trees, but there are landscape items that are in place according to the planned installation of the fence, which I understand is 10 inches off the property line. And, my contention is additional privacy isn't really possible with a legal fence, meaning under 7 feet in that area that's proposed because of the elevation of our property. And I want to say, not to be combative, but to say Massachusetts general law does protect trees on property lines and root damage and subsequent damage to trees on adjacent properties and nuisance fences that serve no purpose. So, like I said, I just want to be sure everyone's aware of this, and I'm glad to get it into the public record at this time before any work is done. So my request is, don't permit the fence to be built, but I have some further thoughts on that. This is off the back property looking over to 23, and this is the side rail looking over to 23. This is the second most permeable view. It's about probably 15 feet off the ground. So a 6-foot fence down here won't add any privacy. This is at ground level looking over, just below the deck, but on ground level. This is out the kitchen window. This is the most permeable view. And the trees that I mentioned that Mr. Grazzi purchased and my landscaper placed, and he refused offer of sharing the cost. He was very gracious in placing the trees. They're all on my property, but they're all, or half of them will be intersected by this fence, according to the current plan, as I understand it. And this larger tree will get a significant haircut of about 50%. This is looking up to the street here and down to the pond along the property line. This isn't the property stake. That's the 100-foot mark of the conservation area. But in any case, it's hard to give you an impression of the density because it is so dense. But if I come back from my yard, these are the trees that you just saw, and this is looking over to 23 South View. And this is a more direct shot. These are the two most permeable views, and the most amount of privacy that would be gained by the fence is in this area because it would probably be up about this high. And so looking from the street, this is 23 South View front yard looking over towards my property, and the fence would be basically cutting right down through here. That's about the property line. So I don't know. Some people like fences. I'm not going to argue taste, but I think this looks beautiful to me. And on the other side of that, this is my property looking over to his property. I don't think an argument could be made that additional privacy is needed. And then just the last photo in this series is for perspective. Here's the monument and the survey stake. So the fence would start somewhere around here, hopefully behind this tree, which is on 23 property, but just at the border of the 11-foot right of way, and it has to go down there. But so if you decide to do a fence, then I just have to suck it up. But, I would like there to be an awareness that no damage to significant trees or landscape planting is caused. Future damage by something that occurs over time because the trees have been severely handicapped, or present damage by removing the trees. And I would like the fence to be set back not 10 inches, but at least 2 feet for maintenance without trespass, because there's no maintenance possible with a 10-inch setback. And also, I was told this was going to happen, and it hasn't, to stake the fence paths so we can truly see the route that it will take from the road down through the conservation area. And so that before any work is done, we can review the path of the fence and any encroachment, and then have an approval, and then do the fence. Because once the tree's cut, there's no remedy. I know you're trying to do that for the rest of the property, but there's no remedy. I'll be dead before the remedy matches what is there right now. And so the encroaching utilities, which again, Mr. Grazzi had no part in this, but he owns the property, and the previous owner had a very broad view of where his property was. So there's water utility, electrical utility, and light fixtures on my property. here's my stake from about 10 years ago, and here's a recent stake. And so you can see a perspective going up here 10 inches. This tree will get a big haircut. Here's the same thing in the woods. And it's just curious that the current survey puts the stakes to the right of my former stake. This one is my former stake. Here's another one that shows it's right in the path of a tree. And then the encroaching utilities, you can see here, this post is the water faucet, and down from the water faucet is an electric utility. And so that is the line of sight runs through there. It's so dense, you can't even see it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, some of this is out of jurisdiction. The front yard, the entire front of the property is out of jurisdiction.
Yeah, let's move on.
I just have one more slide. So if I could finish, Mr. Costa, thank you very much. So the proposed fence is 9 to 12 inches off the property line. And so and these stakes are gone, but here's the one stake that was in. There's one more stake that was put in for the fence. That's not adequate to judge the line of the fence. And finally, this light fixture might actually be on my property. So I would say I understand that some of this is not conservation, but I'm just putting you on notice if you want to get combative about it, that Massachusetts.
All right, that's
federal law
enough. That's
protects-
enough. That's
Okay.
not in our jurisdiction. We don't need to have an argument here. You made your point.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Please stop sharing. Thank you. All right. Jen, is there anything else in the public chat function?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Is there any other commission comments, questions?
I think
Hold on,
Mr.
Matt.
Grassi would like to-
Matt,
I'm sorry.
hold on, please. Any other commission comments? All right, Mr. Costa.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, Mr. Grassi would like to speak, and I don't think he knows how to raise the hand.
Mr. Grassi, do you have video?
No,
All right. Mr. Grassi, you're up.
oh, there's video. How about that?
Good thing you're dressed.
I don't understand why a lot of this is a big deal over a fence. A fence is something I want. And if I want to make it 6 foot or 8 foot, whatever necessary permits I need to do, I'll do. I don't understand why there's such a big argument over a fence.
Well, you're right. Everybody has a right to their opinion.
Can I just say one thing? I'm John's wife, Diane, owner of the house as well. One of the main reasons for the fence is because on that side of the house, it is our bedroom and bathroom. And numerous times I have been in my bedroom, which is my closet, it's a very large closet, and that's where I change my clothes and whatnot, and have looked out the window numerous times to find the neighbors standing, looking in my window with their dog on their leash, making me feel very uncomfortable. That is why I would prefer a fence on that side.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Grassi?
Oh, thank you.
Don't worry.
All right. Mr. Wall, do you have anything to add? Smart man. All right, we have a motion and I'm sorry, we don't have a motion yet. So we have a request for continuance till 10/20 for the purpose of reviewing the original order conditions from 93.
At the request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue this to 10/20.
Okay.
Second.
For a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until October 20th. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Untitled aye.
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right. It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until October 20th. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good
Thank you
night.
very much for your time. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Night, Brian, night, Matt. Mr. Chairman, we need to table the next hearing until one of the representatives is able to get in. Can we take Matt Weeks? Can we table the Bailey hearing and then take Matt Weeks up and then return to the Bailey hearing? We're waiting for Jen Crawford.
We've been waiting for Jen Crawford for many months. All right. We need a motion and a second to table 132 Little Neck Bars Road.
So
Or
moved,
so moved.
Gladfelter.
Okay. Who was second?
I'll second. I think both Pat and I give Pat the motion. I'll second it.
You're so generous. All right. Betsy, this is the table. I'm sorry, this
Gladfelter,
is the table 132.
Correct.
Okay.
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
did I skip someone? No. Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right, it's unanimous. We have tabled 132. All right, that brings us up to requests to amend an existing order of conditions. Matthew Weeks, Nantucket Sounds, south of Washburn Island, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4510 to allow for the farming of sugar kelp, Saccharina, oh yeah, Latticini. Love that Latin. I think you guys are just trying to trip me up.
Mr.
It
Chairman,
works.
I'm bringing Matt Weeks up as a panelist to present his project. Matt, you're in. Can you hear us?
And you have to say that 3 times fast.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. Matt Weeks. I've been involved in commercial fishing and aquaculture in Falmouth for almost 20 years now. And I'm looking just to amend my grant and the sound. It's a 5-acre grant that was permitted 2 years ago to try sugar kelp this winter, possible.
Matt, do you have a diagram of where that's going to be? Can you share your screen or do you want me to?
I can try. This is one of my first Zoom meetings here.
Okay. And just so the board knows, this has been done before. You amended a aquaculture grant, I believe, in Megantic Harbor.
There was an amended grant, and it wasn't me though.
No, I'm
It's somebody
saying,
else.
yeah, they've done this before where
Yeah.
you've amended an aquaculture grant to allow for the growing and harvesting of sugar kelp.
Correct. Yes. How do I share? I'm not really sure how to.
See something that says share?
Hang on, Matt.
At the bottom of your screen when you move around your
Yeah,
cursor?
I see. Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay. And did that work? No.
You know what, Matt? I have it. I can show them. I can show them the design.
Sorry. Once upon a time, I was proficient in computers, and
Wisely moved out of it.
I guess.
No worries. I'm going to share my screen right now, Mr. Chairman. So this is the information that the staff, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of what this, Matt, you can explain what they're looking at, I guess.
Yes, this is a basic kelp design that's been used in Maine and Connecticut, Long Island. And it's, it's a pretty simple system, just a long line, about 200 feet in length between two moorings. And it's weighted and buoyed at different depths to make sure the kelp's at the right depth. You don't want it at the surface. And all this gear comes out of the water. The gear is put in the water in November when the seed's put on, and then when it's harvested in April, it's all removed. And I'm also looking to partner with Hui on another system to try to growing on the bottom instead of floating. And that will be anchored with helical anchors.
Is there anything else you want me to show them, Matt? Maybe the map of the
So,
site?
yeah.
Okay.
So the area is the big orange rectangle there in the bottom corner. It's the permitted area.
Okay. Anything else you want me to show them?
No,
So
that's
we
probably-
bottom kelp one?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
other system I'm looking to try. This is just going to be a trial year because the kelp, it's very site specific on whether it's going to work or not. So it's 50-50 chance or less if it's actually going to grow. So this first year, we're just going to try a couple of lines and go from there.
Okay. Can I stop sharing, guys?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. Any questions?
All right. We'll start with Steve.
No, I think this is going to be very interesting. I'm in favor of it. No question.
All right. Peter,
No questions.
Pat,
I see that Jen wanted to make a comment.
I'm sorry.
give a turn.
Okay, I was watching her also for the other reason that I wanted to ask if the staff has any recommendations regarding this project. Because it looks like it's a cool thing to me too. But the scientists need to weigh in.
We don't
Thank
have
you,
any.
Mr. Chair. You don't have any problem. Thank you.
Kevin,
No questions. I
Let's
just
see.
wish you a lot of luck, that's all.
Thank you.
Did you call on me, Jamie?
yes, I did.
I'd like to ask Matt, what do you do with sugar kelp?
Well, hopefully make some money
What-
eventually, but
Well, exactly. Well, we realize it's so you can make money, but
yes,
What's it
the
used
first
for?
year, it probably won't be for human consumption because it's going to be all trial and error, and it may not be the right quality. So it's probably going to be going to have a friend who's looking to buy it for his bioreactor, and if it looks like it's working, then we'll go for like an organic certification and make sure everything is food grade. And in that case, then you dry it out and usually like a greenhouse kind of setup, and there's different uses for it for powders or additives.
like food supplements?
Correct. Yep.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You always have good, interesting projects.
Sometimes they work, but
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Jen,
Matt, do you know how successful the operation is over in Megansett?
I haven't heard. I don't know.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, like I said, it's very site specific, but depending on how much nutrients or current is involved. They've had a lot of success down in Connecticut and Long Island Sound, growing it in a commercial scale, and that's where my seed will be coming from. Some will be coming from Hui, and some will be coming from Connecticut. The Division of Marine Fisheries doesn't allow seed to be purchased from north of the Cape, just so that genetic diversity isn't compromised.
Excellent. Well, good luck, Matt.
Thank you.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No public chat, Mr. Chairman.
I'll
Thank you.
make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
For a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close. Yes. Be closing it, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
And,
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
luck.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready for 132?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I will need a motion and a second to untable 132.
So moved, Gladfelter.
Harris, second.
All right. All right, so we have a motion and a second on table 132. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
All right, it is unanimous. We have untabled it. So let me read it into the record. Next up, which is under continued hearings under notice of intent. Robert B. and Elaine M. Bailey, trustees, the Elaine M. Bailey 2013 Revocable Trust, 132 Little Neck Bars Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management, install restoration plantings, and to construct a patio, front walkway, and increase the size of the driveway. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Jen Crawford and Dave Martin up to present the project.
Jen, you're up. Welcome
Good
back.
evening. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your patience with this project. I take full responsibility for the for the project. We'll just leave it at that. So we did stake the site, so I hope that you were all finally able to view that. Again, thank you for your patience. Really quickly, the project is mostly invasive species management. The current property owner bought the property a little over a year ago. So we've been working with David Martin did all of the site survey. Mike Ball did the wetland delineations for the property. So we've been working back and forth over the last few months to hopefully bring you a project that that is well received. Again, the project's mostly invasive species management, and the homeowners would like to basically reconstruct the front walkway and add a small patio area to the back. We provided mitigation in the form of lawn reduction for those additions at a rate of 3-to-1. And that's basically the project. We've documented our methodology for invasive species removal and restoration work. And I am happy to take any questions.
All right. Mr. Martin, do you want to add anything to that?
You're muted, Dave.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not at this time.
All right. All right, Jen?
Okay, just gonna go through some of the staff comments. Dave, I need an updated plan from you with a revised revision date. Or with a revision date.
Sure.
Okay. So I think you submitted a plan to the office on the 21st, and it still has the September 7th date on it. So if there was any revisions to the plan, we do need a revised date reflected in that.
Happy to do that. I saw that as an edit, not a revision, because we didn't change the project, but happy to give you a plan with a fresh date. Glad to do that.
Thank you. And then do we know when the shower or the AC units were installed?
I did ask the client, and they didn't know. They bought the property a year ago, and I believe that they were there, so they just didn't have that information.
Okay. So Jen, I think some of the concern the staff has is we're not really clear what is being considered mitigation and what is being considered restoration at this point. And
Okay,
we'd
yep.
like that kind of clearly kind of broken out, because mitigation, you're requiring how much in mitigation? I think it's like 333 square feet, correct?
Yes, so by my calculations on the revised plan, I have a required mitigation of 774 square feet, and that is provided and is in those areas, but I'm more than happy to move the plants around so that it's more clear, and then break out a plant specification table that lists those plants. If that's what you're
Okay.
asking for, I can. do
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. That would be helpful. And also, based on a narrative, it appears that about 14,000 square feet of invasive species management is going to be conducted. And you only have about 335 plants being installed.
Yeah.
And that includes the ones you're including for mitigation. And even if I put in like into our little nifty plant calculator we have, I think Alyssa did this.
Yeah.
On average, and I think we did it at a 4 feet on center. On average, depending if you plant it in a grid pattern or a triangle pattern.
Yep.
It's telling us that there should be like 964 plants required for that replacement. And so it seems like a really big gap in between what you're proposing and what would be required or would be required to revegetate that area. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yes, I can actually. So when we were out on site doing our field work, that actually is something that we did look at. And a lot of the there's a lot of invasive vine species there. The predominant invasive shrub species is shrub honeysuckle. And what we actually did do is we took some measurements on site for and we weren't specific about them. We took them wherever we could find them. So like the area along the road, the area along the edges of the lawn. We actually took some average measurements for how close those shrub honeysuckle were growing. And we got anywhere from 4 to 12 feet. It appears very, very well vegetated because of all the vines growing over the top. So what we ended up doing is basically that averages out to around 8 feet on center between all the different, I think I'd have to look back in my data log for how many we actually measured between, but we did actually do some field work to determine about how closely some of those large invasive shrubs were growing. And we averaged out around 8 feet, which is fairly consistent with what we proposed for the shrub replacement. However, I did also, in response to your comments and to your point about if you calculate out those areas based on the square footage and the percentages and everything else, I did do some looking into the feasibility of adding to the plan, basically like rooted native shrub plugs. Because the one thing that we're facing with this project in particular is the homeowners really do want to do this large, extensive invasive management project. But if we are to go forward and plant, 1 to 3 gallon plants, and we plant 900 of them, it makes it cost prohibitive. So one of the ways that I hope, can work with you guys on a closer plant spacing is to still provide what we've shown on the plan, but then add in rooted native shrub plugs. And knowing that there will be some, there's going to be some animal graze, there's going to be some other fatalities with that, but hopefully the end result will bump those numbers up to be something more consistent with, I think, what you guys would be looking for, but also still keep the project consistent with some of the field conditions that we noted, as well as being, consistent with a project budget that this client can actually execute on. So I don't know what you think about that, but that's my response. We did do some field work. We did actually come to some conclusions, and I'm happy to submit those field notes if you want them. But I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense, you're giving your client's budget the way that you're trying to approach it and present it. I get that. I'm not quite sure how the commission's gonna feel. That was about the plants. And I think that was it, Mr. Chairman. Those were our only comments. Jen, the 4 additional cedars proposed, are they part of the restoration or the mitigation?
They can be part of whatever you want. I can make them part of the restoration or the mitigation. So if you want them part of the mitigation, they're part of the mitigation.
Okay. But you are gonna give me a revised plan showing the true mitigation area, and then
yes, I will break it out for you. Yes.
Some more information on the amount of plugs that you'd be proposing, and you're just talking about the 1 gallon plugs or just the plugs themselves. I mean, I know down the road from this project, it's not more of a wetland restoration project. It was a dune restoration project on Drift Road.
Mm-hmm.
There was some heavy grazing that was done, and it was tough to get established. I mean, do you think these plugs would stand a chance?
Honestly, I don't really know until we try. I've never used like wholesale liner sized shrubs, so to speak, to do a restoration project. I honestly, I've never used them. So I honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. What I can tell you is that with the field data that we collected and the photos and everything that we took, you know, there's no ground cover there whatsoever. There is nothing growing underneath that mat of vines over the top of them. You know, the shrubs that are there are acting basically as a scaffolding. So I honestly, I don't know.
Okay. Well, that's honest. I appreciate that. All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless Kevin has something to add.
No, not at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Pat, we'll start with you.
Well, you know, I think it's great that you're doing some removal of invasives. I hope we can work with you to make it an affordable project.
Thank you.
Peter.
I have similar thoughts as Pat. No further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Betsy?
I have questions. So, Jen, if I'm understanding what you said, you went and you looked to see where the honeysuckle were, and they were 8 feet apart. And so that's kind of how you based the number of plants you were going to put in. But now that we have this discussion, you're saying, but in between that, you'll put in little plugs. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just worried with, you know, I deal with invasives every day on conservation projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just afraid when you take out the honeysuckle, it's going to be, you know, overwhelmed with different kinds of invasives, the whole site.
Well, everything that's invasive, so the vine species and everything would come out, and we would do our standard protocol. We would seed the area with native grasses to make sure that we establish a ground cover so that the soils aren't bare, and then we would plant into that.
Okay, I just, it's a big area, and if there isn't enough, you know, shrubby vegetation, I'm just afraid, you know, and that will obviously grow much faster. So the other question I have is, you have, I think there are 5 cedar trees to be moved, and I don't quite understand why they have to all, those are all in the A zone. And there's one right by the house that I can understand that you might want to move. And the 4 of them, so, and then there's another one, there's a statement that there's an electric wire, but it's leaning, but the tree is leaning opposite where the electric wire is. So it's very unlikely that that's going to take the electric wire down. And then all the ones that are right in the front,
yes,
have little wells around them.
They do.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, Jen, if have you or Kevin or Alyssa looked into the prior order of conditions for that house? I mean, I have a feeling that those were supposed to stay. That's why they have those little wells around them.
We can look into that for you, Betsy.
Okay.
One of the reasons for proposing the removals was in response to the new homeowners getting an insurance quote and an insurance. I believe if I remember right, we did start this project quite some time ago, but I can also check on that end of things with the homeowner. I do know that those wells, they are around the trunks, and there clearly was some fill brought in at some point in time to that
Yeah.
area and for the house, because you can't even see the root flare on them. They appear to be in good health, however. I don't think that's, I mean, I can't look at you and say that that's impacting them, but there clearly was some stuff done with grading and fill a number of years ago in order to create the condition that they're in. But I believe that the homeowners' wish to remove them was partially stemming from the fact that they are very close to the house. And I think there was an insurance recommendation from their insurance company for that with the proximity.
Well, number one, I mean, I agree with you. I think it looks like there was fill brought there.
Yeah,
But
most certainly.
Number one, I'd like to see what happened in the past. I'd like to see order of conditions. Hate to send Kevin to the archives again, but it's pretty down at Long Pond. And so that's one thing. And, it may be that those things are required to be there. They're beautiful trees. That's why I would hate to see all of them. I understand some of them may have to go.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I can't look at you and say that they're unhealthy, because they clearly seem to be adapted to those particular site conditions. They seem to have adapted fine.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're just in a somewhat unfortunate location from a homeowner's perspective and an insurance perspective, but we're happy to work with you on that.
Betsy, anything else?
No, but I mean, I guess I'd like to see a revised plan with what you're going to do between how you're going to fill those areas in, whether you're going to put plugs in or not.
Okay.
It'll be
All
a
right.
beautiful area once you're done, Jen. It's
Thank you.
between now and when it gets mature.
Yes, it's the 5-year interval where everything is still reacclimating to its new condition that is painful. I would agree.
Yeah. It's going to look ugly, but you got to be patient.
Yes.
All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right, Ms. Crawford, what's your request?
I would like to request a continuance for 2 weeks if it's possible. And I will be sure to have a plan on time to you within a week, if that's feasible.
We're not meeting on the 13th, Jen. Let me see what I just did on the 20th. Give me 1 second. We have a lot going on the 20th. How about the 27th?
Sure.
Is that okay? Okay.
So
Yeah, at this
request-
point, after putting you guys through the rigor, I will take whatever you will give me. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just looking at, and I just continued something else to the 20th, and they've got quite a few different types of hearings. It might just be a long night. So
sure.
The 27th.
At the request of the applicant, I'll put yes, definitely. That's a good idea. Put Hui at the end so that I can leave.
Okay.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to move this to 10/27/21.
Wall second.
All right. Excuse me, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 10/27. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
Brian, I.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
At night.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until October 27th. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Good night.
Jamie, may I
You
ask
too.
Dave another question before he leaves?
Sure.
So, so Dave, looking at where that salt marsh is, looking at the plan, it looks like there's so you have that little island that's offshore. I mean, it's in the salt marsh, but when you look at it from the bike path, so there is salt marsh there, and there's just vegetation that's growing over it, shading it.
I'm not in the vegetation authority, so that's why I engaged the services of Mike Paul, who I highly respect. I think he's very competent, so he did the delineation for us.
Okay, well, I mean, I didn't walk out there just because I didn't feel like getting my feet wet. I didn't need to see it, but I just wondered if you had walked through there.
Mike walked all through it, and he really let me know about that.
What?
Mike said it was a very difficult site to flag, getting through all of that.
Yeah,
So I'm quite sure he working with him, I find him to be extremely thorough. So I'm quite confident that he walked through the entire site and was careful at every time he placed a flag.
I can
it's a
actually
beautiful
tell you.
site.
Yeah, and I know exactly the upland. He shows it on the plan as an upland inclusion. So I know the area that you're talking about, Betsy. And there, if my memory serves me correctly, there are not actually salt marsh species. There's no Spartina growing in that area. But I think that Mike, knowing Mike as I do, and like David said, he's very thorough. I think that he felt it better to be on the conservative side of the delineation, and I don't think it would have changed. I don't think it would have changed the project, nor do I think it would have changed the buffer zones really, whether it was or it wasn't. So, so I think that that's why the delineation goes through there, but there is not Spartina growing in that little intermediate zone between the upland inclusion and the kind of, we'll call it the mainland, so to speak. But I understand why Mike delineated it the way he did. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
Yeah. That was my question. Then if sea level rises a little bit, then that's going to be Spartina. That's between the two. Oh.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, you good?
Yes. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for everybody's patience.
Next up, request to extend the existing order of conditions. First up, Salt Pond Bird Sanctuaries, Inc. and Quisset Harbor House Land Trust, Inc. Number 48 and number 71, Quisset Harbor Road, Falmouth, Mass. DEP number 25-4280 requests a 3-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is for the maintenance of the knob. Just all the little maintenance activities they do to keep the knob wonderful place to visit, and they are requesting a 3-year extension. We had issued an extension last year, but we're trying to, because of the tolling, they thought their order of condition ended in June of last year, and it actually ends October of this year. We did issue them an extension, but just to keep in line with Mass DEP, we're just invalidating that extension and having her file this one.
Okay, so
it has to do with the tolling from the pandemic.
I make a motion for a 3-year extension.
Harris, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to grant a 3-year extension. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
At night.
It is unanimous. We have granted a 3-year extension. Thank you. Next up is a request for a certificate of compliance. William and Linda Dubal, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, Dubalier, 169 Metoxet Road LLC, 169 Metoxet Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Request for a certificate of compliance for Mass DEP 254207. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, maybe Kevin can take this one. He did a compliance request. If the board remembers, these are two large fiber roll. Well, it's a large fiber roll project that was done in conjunction with an adjacent fiber roll project. This fiber roll project has failed. The array failed. One of the conditions was monitoring reports. When Kevin went out, obviously the array has failed at the base of it. There was no monitoring reports submitted. We were uncomfortable issuing a certificate of compliance in the condition that the project is in. We consulted with your then associate town council, who basically recommended not granting compliance because the project isn't in compliance. We relayed that to the applicant, or Kevin relayed that to the applicant. And as we always do, if the applicant disagrees with the staff's position, they can always, under your regulations, request a hearing from the board. And I believe that's why we're here today. Have I misspoken or misrepresented anything, Kevin?
No, you haven't. I'd just like to include the special condition that we're referencing. And so it's special condition number 8, monitoring reports shall be provided annually for the next 3 years to the Conservation Department to track the success of the project and identify any maintenance needs. End of the condition. So I think you covered pretty much where we're at right now. And I think Michael Borselli would like to address the commission.
All right, hold on. So you said number 8, the monitoring reports were not submitted, correct?
Correct.
And you're saying that the array failed?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Pat has a disclosure to state.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a professional relationship with Attorney Wall regarding a matter outside of the commission's jurisdiction. So I filed a disclosure with our appointing authority and the town clerk, outlining the relationship and stating that I can act without prejudice on matters before this commission. I'm making this disclosure to dispel any appearance of a conflict of interest. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Borselli, are you going to begin?
I'll begin and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Wall, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, representing the applicant, William and Linda Dublier. Jen generally summed up the situation. The Dubliers are summer residents. They're absentee on a significant part of the year. Given the recent past with COVID-19, they live out of state. They haven't been to the property very much. So they weren't on site to see some of the natural events that occurred, certain storm events that occurred that basically caused the fiber roll array to fail. They came on site on one visit and were fairly shocked to see what had happened. And it was as a result of some extraordinary storms and high tides. And they were basically very discouraged and didn't want to fund a repair or invest any more money in trying to stabilize the bank. So because of that, in the property being on the market, they simply want to sell the property and transfer a clear title. In some ways, they wish they had just left well enough alone and let nature do what nature is trying to do, which is continue to allow the coastal bank to erode and continue to provide sediment to the beach. But when they first received the order of conditions, it was 2016. Their lives have changed, their lifestyle and where they intend to live has changed, and it's simply become unfeasible for them to continue to try to repair something that they feel as though will continue to be fighting the forces of nature such that they just can't continue to fund it. They were unaware or lost sight of the fact that a certificate of compliance was needed, even though it's explicit in the cover letter. So they never applied for it. They understand that monitoring reports should have been provided, but we can't go back in time. What they would like to do is allow nature to take its course. And we were hopeful that you would be able to, as a commission, issue a certificate of compliance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
I don't have a lot.
Mr. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Brian Wall, I represent the applicants for this certificate of compliance along with Mr. Borselli. I don't have much to add to what Mike said. I think he was very clear. I did speak with Mike. I spoke with the clients and I read the staff report. And it seems to me, and if I'm putting words into the staff's mouth, I don't mean to, but it seems that when staff went to issue the certificate, the order said that there were supposed to be monitoring reports, and there clearly are not. And so it seems to me that staff was uncomfortable issuing a certificate under those circumstances. So we were bumped to the commission. And as Mike said, we can't turn the clock back. We can't go back in time and submit monitoring reports. So we're simply asking that you issue the certificate of compliance with regard to the fact that the project was implemented per the order. And as Mike said, it hasn't worked out. I did kind of think of an illustration to help, I hope, get to where we need to be able to get this certificate, because it is needed in conjunction with the sale. The house is actively on the market right now. My thought was that if the project had been put in year one and the property was being sold, the property owner could have come forth to the commission and asked for a certificate of compliance at that time. And I think that as long as the project was in conformance with the plans, the commission could have issued a certificate and then put a condition on that certificate that the monitoring reports be submitted after the fact, or the project could have been implemented in 3 years or more down the road, the applicant could ask for the certificate. But either way, the point of my illustration is I don't think that the monitoring reports are critical to being able to certify that the project was implemented per the plan. It's in a dynamic area, so now it doesn't look like the plan anymore. But as Mr. Borselli said, it's because it's in an area where it's getting hit with waves, and now it's a bank that supplies sediment to the environment. So that's where we stand. We're trying to help out the Dubliers and get their property in a situation where they can sell it. And we're hoping the commission will grant compliance.
Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well, I sympathize with the applicant. The commission has the bank supplied sediment to the beach prior to putting the array in. The array was done as a quote unquote soft solution to slow the erosion rate down. We all know, and it's said it at most hearings, that these types of systems require maintenance. They require monitoring. That was not done. We saw this once before on a case where monitoring wasn't required. The applicant came in to try to put a seawall in, and even DEP said that no, because the applicant hadn't monitored it and allowed it to fail. The staff's concern and the former associate counsel's concern was that if the commission issues a certificate of compliance, then any new property owner can come in and have a case for a a hard armored wall because this board said, yes, we'll issue you a certificate of compliance. So that's where the concern was lying on this town staff side of the argument. So that was the position that the town took. Again, they're before the commission. What I would suggest is if the commission hasn't gone out to the site, that prior to making any sort of decision, you go out and you review the site. That would be a prudent thing to do.
All right, Betsy, we'll start at the top.
So, yeah, that's a good idea, Jen, and I'll do it because I'm just curious to see. So, but Jen or Kevin or Mike or Brian, if you've been out there, what's there now?
I can pull up a photo for you guys, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay, so you can see here the bottom of the array is scarped out. You see some of the remnants of the array at the bottom. And this is just a general view of what that area looks like.
Yeah, so personally, I don't have a problem if they don't put another array in to bring it back to the way the plant. And this is the problem with all these soft solutions. You don't know how much they're gonna be back, but somebody has to clean up all that stuff that's on the shoreline.
Yeah, there is some
That's
fiber
my
rolls.
concern.
You can see the fiber rolls at the base, yes.
And there's,
Cement
looks like there's
blocks and
some,
trash.
exactly. I mean, if you want to just restore it to let nature take its course there, I can live with that, but you have to remove all the stuff that you've put in.
Mhm.
That's my only comment, Jamie.
All right, Kevin,
I would agree with Betsy.
Pat,
I agree with Betsy as well. It looks like in terms of the procedure that we follow, does it make sense to do an enforcement order to clean it up? I don't know how to clear their record of the order of conditions that's on record. You're not going to get a certificate of compliance unless you go back to A and put up new core envelopes and come for a certificate then. So would an enforcement order help clean your title?
I don't think that's gonna take care of the already recorded order of conditions. But I see your point. Maybe we can talk between now and when we're gonna be continued to about a new notice of intent to clean up the site. That might, if we got a new notice, I mean, a new order, and then a new certificate of compliance, that might take care of everything.
Even if you have a backdated order that's not been closed out, I think there's a bit of a conundrum here.
Yeah, I see your point, Pat. I'll have to think about that a little bit.
Okay.
This is a legal issue. The two of you ought to be able to figure out something.
Hammer it out.
Well, you know, if I can then to kind of extrapolate on what Pat said and to go back to what Attorney Mullen, I don't want to put words in her mouth when she's not here to say what she said, but the concern about these types of soft solutions not working out as hoped does happen. And so I don't think there's any maintenance requirement in this particular order. It says monitoring reports shall be provided. And then it says any maintenance. It doesn't say required maintenance. It says any maintenance has to be approved by the commission or by the administrator. So I think if you extrapolate this forward, assuming for argument's sake that there was an affirmative maintenance requirement, the most it could last would be 3 years, which would be the life of the permit. And then if it didn't work out after that, the property owner should still be able to clear their title and get a certificate of compliance.
Well, in theory, Brian, the property owners are supposed to get their certificates of compliance in 3 years and not wait.
I know. Yeah.
So a maintenance, I mean, one would think that if the core fiber roll was damaged, that, you know, any prudent, you know, concerned property owner would not be spending the money that they spent for this array just to allow it to fail. So like a hard revetment could go on. I mean, the board needs to understand how close the house is to this bluff. And, again, the town staff's concern is, making a case for a hard revetment. And I just don't think that the monitoring and the maintenance that are required in these rays was done. And it is a tough situation for everyone to be in, because obviously the property owner wants clear title. The town doesn't feel that we can issue compliance. And so we're leaving it up to the board, and the board can make whatever decision that you would like to make. But I would caution you, because this project, this property will be back before you. So whatever we do, it will be back. It might not be with Brian and Mike, but it will be back.
Right, and you'll have all of the history whenever that applicant may or may not come before you.
Yeah, but I think it's just going to take some thought in how we approach this, Brian.
I think so, and I sincerely get the impression that the commission is trying to help here.
Yeah,
the problem that needs to be solved, and there's a confluence of other issues, as Mr. Borselli said. They're out of state. There was COVID. They haven't been here for 2 years. The other thing too is, if you look at condition number 12, it says no certificate of compliance will be issued until the entire project, including landscaping, is completed and the site is permanently stabilized with vegetation. So had they come in the day after the project was done, I think they could have gotten a compliance certificate with a condition to submit monitoring reports. And so it's just, I don't see how, where we are in the calendar, that we still couldn't get compliance, because the project was at one time done per the plan. It's not now, obviously, but it was.
Did we see that?
Well, in the sense, Mr. Chairman, if there were photos of the project when it was completed.
Well, you're saying it was completed and it should have gotten compliance. They just didn't apply for compliance. Did we see that it was completed?
No, I don't think you've ever been presented with anything.
Right. So anybody can come in and say they completed it.
Yeah, valid point. I do understand.
I mean, Pat?
I'm wondering if the cleanest way is to file a new notice of intent, and the notice of the order of conditions will list this history and state that any certificate of compliance for the pending OOC will relate back to the one that's been abandoned up to this point. I've never seen anything like this, but you got to get creative.
I mean, I can ask other agents how they've handled something like this, if they've handled something like this, but I'm tending to agree with Pat. I think filing a new notice, writing out all the findings and the history and everything else in that notice, cleaning up the site, and then I don't know. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'll have to consult with Frank.
I have a question.
Town council, Frank Duffy.
Was there landscaping mitigation required?
No, I believe this was just the fibro rule. Kevin?
There was a small amount of area that needed to be replanted for construction access. Me and Mr. Borselli had reviewed that, and it appeared to be stable.
That's correct. There was a construction access that was required to be restored, and it was. Mr. Chairman, can I share my screen very briefly for showing you a photo for reference?
Yes, sir.
This is just for reference. This was 2014, before the fiber roll array was installed. Nature wants to take it back. It didn't work.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm trying to illustrate. This was 2014, before the fiber roll array was installed.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's you applied to do something, at the risk of sounding like I'm accusing you of something, you're saying it was completed, but a request wasn't made for compliance. But we can't see that. All we can see is that it's not working. So that's, for me, that's the dilemma. And I agree, it should have to be cleaned up. Jen?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant has her hand raised. I believe she wants to say something, so I'm going to promote her up to a panelist, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak before my client comes on? Just a real quick thing, if between now and the continuance period, Jen, if we could talk, I have had a situation like this in Plymouth without telling a war story. A client of mine purchased a property with an open and expired order of conditions. The attorney didn't understand wetlands and closed with that open order. So we had to file for a new notice to get permission to finish the unfinished order. And there were it was an eroding bank. And so the conditions had changed as well. And then we finished that work and got a certificate of compliance for the second order that encapsulated all of the other work, and it cleaned everything up. So.
Okay, we can look at that, Brian. I think you're saying that you finished the project under the second order. In this case, the project's like gone. So again, I mean, I'd be happy to consult Frank. I'd be happy to explore different options with you. You know, we have to figure this out. There's an encumbrance on this title. We have to figure it out.
Right.
But I just don't want to go forward and put the town in a position where, there's a case that can be made because we issued a certificate of compliance for a hard armoring solution in this case. That house is right there. So that's my biggest concern. And like I said, I've seen DEP before not allow a hard armoring on a project because the applicant did not maintain the soft solution at first. And I think most of the board members know which project I'm talking about, at least Betsy and Pat do. That's the concern of the staff. But I've promoted your client up, and I believe she wants to address the board.
Okay.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to hear us and move forward on our project. But I did want to say that we had the Concom come out multiple times after the project was completed. And in fact, there was an instance where one of your staff members had mentioned that the wall was, or the bolsters were not working. And
that was a commissioner, ma'am, not the staff. That was a commissioner, I believe.
What was his name?
Mark Gurney.
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah. Yep. And
also we had Hamilton Tree Service come out with your permission to cut trees, so that some board members came to look at that before the trees were cut. That was after the work was done as well.
That's a good point. If I can interrupt, there was an amended order of condition requested to remove a couple of trees. So there was the original order was issued in August of 2016. An amendment was issued in September of 2017. So there was a follow-up commissioners on the site. Whether they observed the bank or not is unknown to me.
And Mike, you and I went out there to look at possibly extending the fiber array. Remember that? We figured that out as well.
And at that time, it was intact.
Yeah, it was stable when we went out there that first time to look at the extension.
Yes, that was very early on.
Yeah.
After completion.
We were unaware of the annual compliance. I'm sorry. We didn't read the fine print coming from out of town. I am a conservationist and on the environment committee, so we did this thinking we could help the erosion, not make it worse.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't waste money doing this otherwise. It's insane.
we didn't want to do a hard solution because we knew that wasn't environmentally.
We're just doing what
correct.
we were told to do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry
So-
we didn't comply with the annual report.
I do have many photos of each year because I had documented everything. I mean, if you guys want to see that, I can, send that over to you. So whatever you need from us, we're happy to help. But, at this time, we'd really like to be able to sell the house, as sad as that is. We love it there, but we just can't keep it.
So Jen, it sounds like the path to move forward would be a new order to clean the place up and just clean up paperwork as well as the actual site. Is that? I mean, you have to look at the legality of it. I get it, but
Yeah, I really do need to consult Frank on this. If that's the way we want to go, do we want to have them file a new order to clean up the site and then write all the findings in that order and then close both orders at once? Brian and I, or Brian and Frank, can figure something else out. We're going to try to help you, but we just have to figure out what the best way to move forward, and also to protect the town's interests and the interests of the act and the bylaw. So that's my focus, is I have to protect those interests.
Yeah.
But I will work very hard with Attorney Wall and Mike Borselli to try to find a path forward for you.
Yes, thank you. I was there. I was just there this past weekend, and there is metal coming out of the ground. And I'm very concerned about that. I don't want anyone getting hurt. So
no, I understand.
As soon as we can get this going, just so everyone's safe, I, appreciate that.
I understand.
Thank you.
So Jamie, we need a continuance?
not yet. Let me, we still have two more comments potential.
Okay.
Peter?
I could agree generally what has been said, and I want to say that I think we should progress with our proceedings so that the homeowner has a clear title to sell. And I don't know all the intricacies of the legalisms, but I think we should go that way.
All right. Steve?
I agree with Peter. If we can move this forward, it seems like intentions are correct and that area is just eroding away.
Okay. Mr. Borselli, what are you thinking?
I don't, this is new to me. Procedurally, you're instructing us to do some things which include a new notice of intent. So I don't know what continuing this hearing really does. Maybe Brian can offer something. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. It would, if a new notice of intent is filed that describes how the debris would be removed, and we have a hearing on it, and we show, on the plan where the debris is, that's to be removed, and you issue an order of conditions, I think this COC just stays in limbo until we get a new order, and then we file for a new certificate of compliance. And I would think if we complied with the removal of the debris, you could issue a certificate of compliance because that work was done. And now the bank is basically back to the way it was in that photo I just showed you, nature taking its course, that I would think you could then issue a certificate of compliance on the original order. So I don't know that there's any value to
consult with Frank Duffy.
I mean, we can continue this till we consult, but in the meantime, we should probably be expediting a new notice of intent application.
Well, you should, but this is an open hearing for us.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Kevin O'Brien?
Yeah. First off, this has to be decided by the attorneys, Mr. Duffy, I believe. And then after that, we can decide whether or not we're going to have a new project with some way to close it out. But I don't think we want to make any commitment tonight as to anything to do with the existing order.
I think Kevin O'Brien is correct. You do need something to be able to clean up that site, get that metal out of there, get whatever's left out of there. Mike, do you have any idea what it's going to take to remove all that? Do we need to reopen up that construction site? Is it?
No, I don't think so. In fact, the Dubliers have a contractor that approached me about cleaning it up.
Is it done by hand? Does he have to get a machine down there?
I think it'd be done by hand. but we have to, I want to talk to them. It's Hampton and Blanca, I believe.
No, it was Chip Schultz.
Chip Schultz.
Or Chip Schultz.
Or Ben Carson now? Is it
It's Ben Carson, well, Chip Schultz, isn't Schultz the one that put in the wall?
Mhm,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, they put in the wall, so, I'd like to consult with Ben to see what it's gonna take for him to get down there and get the debris out. It might not even take a notice, it could take an RDA, but then do we want a notice to write the history down? I don't know, these are all things we have to figure out.
Well, I'll tell you this, the only thing that's really left there is the wire coming out. So if that's like dug out and clipped back, I think it would be fine. And then there's just empty bolsters. It's just netting that literally could just be put into a garbage bag and
By hand.
Yeah.
steps. So that's.
We'll come up with a methodology. I'll meet with the contractor and we'll describe it. And if we go forward after town council's review, we filing a new notice, we'll have a site visit. We'll work this out with a new notice of intent.
Sounds good.
We
Thank you.
tried to mitigate with grasses and rocks and things, but we're not allowed to do anything without permission, so that was it.
So Mike, at least procedurally for tonight, it makes sense to continue.
Sure.
For all the aforementioned reasons.
Whatever date that makes sense. I don't think we should continue 2 weeks because I don't think that'll give Mr. Duffy enough time.
No, I'm thinking the 27th. Hopefully, hopefully we'll have a path, at least a path forward by then.
I request a continuance to the 27th.
So moved.
For a second.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for all that, Mike. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this until 10/27 with the intent of getting some feedback from town council. Mike, maybe in the meantime, if you'll speak with them, your client and Schultz, you said, just so we can move it all forward. All right, so if there's nothing else, Betsy.
Unfiltered aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We've continued this until 10/27. Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you, Jen.
Good night.
Night.
All right. Next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. Kevin and Christina Doniger, 59 Showood Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction of a patio and unpermitted reconstruction of a deck. Jen?
Mr. Chairman, I saw the property owner in the hearing earlier. She was in, she was out, she was in, and now she's out again.
Dodging us?
I don't know. I spoke with her on Thursday, maybe Wednesday or I think I spoke with her on Thursday. I spoke with her on Thursday, and I explained the importance of coming before the board because, I mean, they did. I just feel, we've continued this to the beginning since the beginning of August. She had attended that first hearing in September and then got bumped out of the meeting and couldn't figure out how to get back in. And then last time she just forgot about her hearing. I like I said, I did see her in there. I'd like to give the property owner a chance to address the board when I present the enforcement, but that's going to be up to you guys. If you want me to go forward, I will present the enforcement case to you. If you want to try one more time to get her into a hearing, we could probably try to schedule her next week. It's not a very long hearing. It won't be 9:30 at night. Maybe that was the issue. I'm not quite sure. It's gonna be up to you guys. I mean, this could result in the removal of a pretty substantial patio. So that's why I want to give the property owner the opportunity to address. I did speak with her last Thursday. I did, tell her to start looking at people to get a survey, because the survey is going to be critical on whether or not we have to remove the whole patio, half the patio. I mean, it's basically a patio moving closer to a salt marsh than present primary structure. So if you'd like me to go forward, I would, or we could continue one more week and try to give them the opportunity to address the board.
Me personally, I'm okay with that, as they understand that. Just forgive my verbiage, that avoiding it is not going to solve the issue. So
I have explained that to them.
yeah, one more week. I mean, that's my opinion. Pat?
I think we should extend it, but give written notice to her tomorrow that this is the last time we're going to extend it. There's going to be a hearing next week.
I've already started drafting the email to her. I've been watching, she's been bouncing in and out, so I'm not quite sure what happened. But I think, in her work, she's gotten some not so great advice from contractors. So I just want to give her the opportunity to address the board.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to throw in at that? All right. So
Do we need a motion to continue?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue to 10/6/21.
Walsh, second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to continue this enforcement hearing until 10/6. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
Brian, aye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Button aye.
It is unanimous. We've continued this until 10/6. Next up, vote order of conditions. First item, Fenton and Melody Brown, 159 Upalong Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Who closed this? Did we meet last week? We met last week, right?
Yes, you
Yes,
did.
we
You were by
did.
yourself.
Yep.
We were
Okay.
at training.
Yeah, training.
And Jamie, it's all of us on the forum.
Thank you.
This is the big addition to the project. The only concerns the staff had was that little beach area that seems to have, it's been something there and over the years in the aerials over in like the little salt marsh area to the beach. But that was one of our only comments. And I think the other one was the hard walkway that they had put over the bank or dune area to get over there that Tom was going to either add on to his plan or ask them to remove.
Actually, I don't have
They had removed the garage a while ago and they put an addition there. It was like kind of an oddly shaped kind of additions coming out on both sides.
Yeah.
Nobody remembers this project from last week?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
no,
I
absolutely
remember.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The only thing I remember you didn't like was the shell, the little
Right.
shell walkway.
Yeah, the shell pathway, that was it, the shells, I'm sorry, the little hard shell structure pathway. And then the staff report had mentioned the little beach area.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem with that shell pathway. I think that's because it's, I mean, those are natural shells.
Okay.
We're good to you, Peter.
I do remember that it's a net decrease in both Zone A and Zone B.
Hard to believe with that addition, but yeah, it does come out of the Zone A. Most of that addition is out of that Zone A, Peter. And they're taking out a substantial driveway.
All right.
So approve with normal conditions.
Make a motion to approve with normal conditions. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if you weren't
No,
ready
it's
for
okay.
that.
That's all right.
I'll second.
Pat has something to ask.
No, I was just teasing Steve, putting my hand up.
I didn't raise my hand.
No.
Jamie's always yelling at us for not going on and getting these things finished.
Yeah. Elections next week. Put your nomination papers in for chairman. My hand's up. May I say something? The only note I had was about moving the kayak rack upland.
Yep.
That wasn't a big deal. I agree with Betsy. I don't have a problem with the path.
I think it'll keep people in that area, and otherwise they're gonna walk anywhere there and it's wet. It's gonna be wet and muddy.
All right, so we're not looking for anything special. So we already have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions in the standard manner. How's that?
Good.
Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat, no.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. You saved me from having to yell at you again. Next up,
Who?
all of you. Lupingi and Ming Zhang, 45 Green Pond Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a proposed garage addition and proposed garage addition with number of mitigation plantings placed in the backyard area with 3 additional trees. I do believe that you had no questions on this project. Staff did have a question about the shrubs from the previous order. They are there. Nate Garcerian from Holmes and McGrath presented, and nobody had any questions for him, which really bothered his colleague Tim, who was texting me, "Why aren't you asking him any questions?" So it was a pretty straightforward project.
You want a motion, Jamie?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions with the standard conditions.
Walsh, second.
Your English accent was coming out there for a minute. You notice that? You make a move.
Mine?
Yeah.
Mine or Kevin? Mine?
Oh, you. Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat, no.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Dick J. Boss, 203 Chappaquay Road, West Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the project where they're going to raise our AISE, the existing house, demo the garage, move the house over, sink some pilings, move the house over the other side, sink some more pilings, put it on top, and then build an addition on pilings behind it.
Very dramatic. I like that presentation.
Yeah, I know. They've abandoned the rocking part of it, but they've revised it. There's no enclosure shown. They've revised the planting scheme. It's going to be interesting to watch them do it because that is a tight site.
Mm-hmm.
And they box themselves in even more. So that it's going to be really interesting. What I would say is obviously, given what they have to do in that location, we'll want to meet with their contractors prior to going forward, and then probably when they're starting to do this work, be notified so that we can go and check on the site. I'm really concerned with damage being done they're surrounded by dunes, completely surrounded by dunes. So I'm really concerned about damaging the dunes, particularly on Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries property. So we'll condition it that we meet with the contractor first, and that, if there's any change to the methodology, they obviously have to notify us.
Can we require, if you will, a status report as they go along?
That would not be a bad idea, Mr. Chairman. So a weekly status report on the project would be
I don't
fine.
know about weekly, and if one of our colleagues was here, he'd want a 50-page report. I'm not saying that. I'm just
I'm just emailed to me like on a, just a weekly status report.
Yeah,
It's not going to take them that long to do it.
just so that it's not at the end of the project and you're going, oh, what about this? What about that? And so they understand. When I did the site visit, I spoke with the owner for a while actually, and I don't know. I just get the impression he's not looking to, they're looking to enjoy the property for years to come. So, and it's a great property, so I can't see them not wanting to put it back together.
Yeah, no. And when I say weekly status report, I don't mean like a 50-page report. Just shoot me a quick email. Just let me know what's going on. If there was any, and it's not a bad place to visit. I'm sure Kevin and Alyssa will love to go check on that project.
In January.
Yeah.
Betsy, can I have the quorum, please?
Yes, it's everyone but you. It's Kevin,
thought
Betsy,
so.
Steve, Peter, Pat.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Anybody have anything else? All right.
So I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Walls, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else. All right. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walls, aye.
Steve.
And I.
It is unanimous. You have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Greg Clancy, Clancy Construction, 71 Alder Lane, North Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This was Tom Bunker's project. I don't think we had any additional comments as of the last revised plan. We got the letter from the association allowing them to remove the patio they constructed on association property. The thing about patios this year, just, so I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right. And again, the quorum, I'm not on it, correct?
Correct. The rest of us are all on it.
All right, I'm leaving. Bye.
No, you can't, Jamie.
I know. I got paid for the whole night. I have to stay. Got it. All right.
So I'll make
Anybody have? Steve? Oh. Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept this order as discussed.
Walls, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walls, aye.
Steve.
And I.
It is unanimous. You have issued an order of conditions. And folks, that is it. A short night that got longer than it should have.
Yes.
Oh, well. At any